United States Army Air Force's doctrine in early 1944 assumed that bomber streams, composed of 60 Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress bombers each, would only survive German interceptor zones with continuous, long-range escort. This January 11, 1944 operation launched with 600 crew lives dependent on a solitary major, 2 external 75-gallon fuel tanks, and 2,472 combined rounds in the 6.5 caliber Browning M2 machine guns of his P-51B Mustang. Commanders allocated only 37 minutes of combat fuel at 23,000 feet altitude, dictating a sortie velocity between 420 and 440 miles per hour, as supply projections accounted for heavy defensive action with 0 friendly fighter reserves in the engagement box. Pre-mission calculations estimated that an unescorted bomber cell at this range would incur at least 9% losses within the initial 15-minute engagement window. Actual events unfolded far differently. Enemy contact was initiated at 08:21 hours, extending the defensive window by 22 consecutive minutes, during which Major James Howard withstood repeated assaults by 30 German Bf-109 and FW-190 fighters, and sustained a final loss rate below 2%, reversing established attrition models. Recorded after-action reports documented disbelief from higher headquarters, sharply contrasting pre-sortie tables of expected casualties, aircraft write-offs, and psychological factors impacting future morale and crew retention. The P-51B Mustang deployed on this mission offered a maximum armor windshield thickness of 38 millimeters at the pilot's position, tail unit protection rated to withstand 7,120 psi impact, and variable cockpit oil pressures ranging from 55 to 95 psi under full engine stress at altitude. Crosswinds at 23,000 feet measured 12 knots, with a direct headwind velocity of 18 knots, further complicating gunnery deflection angles during head-on enemy pass interceptions. The Mustang's 3-blade propeller sustained operational RPM between 2,600 and 3,000, supporting instantaneous speed changes across a tactical envelope far exceeding prior Allied fighter capabilities in hostile airspace. By the end of the 37-minute engagement above Oschersleben, Major James Howard had expended more than 2,200 rounds of 50 caliber ammunition and 70% of his operational fuel capacity, while defenders yielded no more than 500 meters of tactical airspace to the Luftwaffe. This action safeguarded 60 bombers for the duration of their bomb run and egress, preventing incursion within a 7-kilometer exclusion zone and ensuring all surviving aircraft maintained formation integrity as combat power densities shifted dramatically in favor of the attacking force. Howard's solitary sortie immediately raised fresh tactical debates about doctrine viability and resource survivability under disproportionate enemy odds. Mission coordinates were plotted at 52 degrees, 01 minutes north, 11 degrees, 29 minutes east above Oschersleben, Germany, where the 356th Fighter Squadron, 354th Fighter Group, fielded one P-51B Mustang, piloted by Major James Howard as escort for a friendly bomber cell of 60 B-17 aircraft, each carrying between 8 and 10 crew members, resulting in a total of approximately 600 personnel dependent upon uninterrupted air cover. The Mustang, as part of the newly deployed Allied Pioneer Mustang Group, represented the first integration of an American long-range, single-seat escort at this target zone. Squadron orders prohibited additional formation elements from entering the engagement area due to fuel fatigue among supporting fighters, leaving Howard as the sole barrier between the German interceptors and the B-17 formation. German Luftwaffe opposition on January 11, 1944, included a composite unit of 30 operational fighters, an integrated force of Messerschmitt Bf-109G and Focke-Wulf FW-190A aircraft scrambled from Oschersleben, Bernburg, and Quedlinburg forward airstrips. These fighters executed staggered coordinated attacks at altitudes between 22,500 and 24,000 feet, leveraging hardened covered dispersal points, 1,100 millimeter concrete revetments, and 3.4 meter deep aircraft shelters for ground protection. Enemy pilots from Jagdgeschwader 1 and 3rd Jagdgruppe sectors exploited sectorized radio frequencies, allowing for rapid vectoring based on visual Feldwebel spotting runs from ground observers positioned throughout the Harz region. Howard's P-51B Mustang was loaded with 6 Browning M2.50 caliber machine guns, each supplied with exactly 412 belted rounds for a total of 2,472 rounds. The aircraft lifted from the forward airstrip with full internal fuel tanks providing 184 gallons of usable capacity, augmented by 2 75-gallon drop tanks. The logistical string between launch points and the Oschersleben target extended over 250 miles, with Mustang fuel consumption at full engine operation estimated at 65 gallons per hour, allowing 1 hour and 43 minutes of total flight time before mandatory diversion or forced recovery east of Allied front lines. Visibility on the morning of January 11th was recorded at 4,200 yards, with intermittent cirrus cloud bands between 20,500 and 26,000 feet, masking ground features and introducing unpredictable refractive turbulence. Soil viscosity on Oschersleben's runways was measured at 0.64, sustaining moderate hydroplaning risk for any forced landing or ditching maneuver. The Mustang's initial ingress positioning required a loose echelon right formation to avoid contrail detection by upward-looking Luftwaffe teams, while periodic power settings were adjusted to avoid identifying engine plumes from ground-based anti-aircraft batteries, triangulated along the southern approaches to the target zone. At precisely 08:21 hours, Major James Howard's Mustang established visual contact with the leading elements of 30 Bf-109 and FW-19 fighters at 2,150 meters horizontal range, the engagement beginning 600 meters above the highest bomber in the 60 aircraft cell. Merlin V1650 engine revolutions spiked immediately to 3,000 RPM as Howard set mixture to auto-rich and executed a 2.5 G defensive brake, unspooling all 6.5 caliber Browning machine guns at an initial velocity of 2,800 feet per second. The Mustang's trigger discipline was enforced through rhythmic 1-second bursts, each dispersing calculated increments of the 412-round supply per gun, resulting in rapid temperature rise and requiring precise coolant management across the 37-minute window. German interceptors launched sequential nose-to-nose port-side passes, firing machine gun 131 heavy machine guns at 900 rounds per minute and cannons at 660 rounds per minute. Howard, switching deflection, techniques at unpredictable intervals withstood overlapping cone-of-fire projections and concentrated tracers, confirming at least 7 aircraft scoring direct burst impacts along the Mustang's empennage and dorsal surfaces. The Bf-109 pilots attempted synchronized vertical reversals, while FW-190s bracketed the bomber squadron, exploiting mechanical rates of fire to saturate predicted Mustang movement corridors with heavy ordnance. Bomber cell command elements began urgent transmissions on squadron frequency. Mustang, keep them off us, with tail gunners tracking inbound enemy egress and reporting burst counts by interval. No supporting American fighters intersected the engagement radius, forcing Howard to reroute communication logs via fallback relay calls to Group Command at 354th Headquarters. The B-17 defensive array returned fire with 2,880 pounds of .5 caliber ammunition per squadron minute, but Howard's Mustang alone absorbed the Vanguard attacks, sustaining radio contact, severance twice due to direct enemy electrical strikes on tail wiring conduits. By 08:58 hours, Major Howard had driven back the final organized Luftwaffe offensive at coordinates 52 degrees, 00 minutes, 38 seconds north, 11 degrees, 30 minutes, 12 seconds east, with a cumulative 2,234 rounds expended from the Mustang's machine guns and remaining fuel reserves, calculated at 17%. Bomber formation status post-engagement listed 2 confirmed aircraft lost, 4 minor hull breaches, 0 crew fatalities attributed to escort failure. Howard's own system integrity rated at marginal hydraulic fluid at critical low, all portside ammo racks empty, ventral canopy fractured, yet squadron logbooks classified the defense as successful beyond projected operational capacities for single-unit sorties against triple-strength opposition. 8:29 hours. Major James Howard scans aft and above, registering the densest cluster of enemy aircraft at coordinates 52 degrees, 00 minutes, 33 seconds north, 11 degrees, 17 minutes, 44 seconds east, positioning the Mustang at precisely 23,800 feet. Howard identifies a bomber's gap in the defensive formation starboard of the second combat box, near 520 meters long and just 160 meters wide, where Luftwaffe fighters have begun to penetrate, exploiting the low gun depression angle of the B-17's ventral turrets. Howard's field of vision is constricted, but he judges this gap as the enemy's probable breakthrough point amid rapidly shifting contrails. The first wave of German Bf-109s roll into attack at a 40-degree diving angle. The full array of their standardized 20mm MG-15 1/2 zero autocannon visible beneath the cowling. Spacing between the German aircraft shrinks to under 60 meters. Howard pushes the P-51B Mustang into a shallow left bank, closing on intercept vector at 420 miles per hour. As Browning M 2.50 caliber bursts blaze, each approximately 800 meters per second muzzle velocity, Howard tracks a lead Bf-109. Impact sparks are observed on the starboard wing root. At this range, the Mustang's guns penetrate the 8mm armor steel skin of the Messerschmitt's engine cowling. Howard's ammunition count decreases. 324 rounds remain in each inboard gun, 375 in outboards. The cockpit fuel gauge registers 160 gallons, margins dwindle under continued afterburner. In the opening 7 minutes of engagement, Howard's rapid, aggressive maneuvering disrupts the primary German attack axis, forcing the Bf-109 pairs to break formation and initiate defensive scissors at altitude bands between 22,900 and 24,050 feet. Multiple bursts from the Browning M 2.5 caliber machine guns cripple at least 2 aircraft. One spins down trailing glycol and another pours smoke from its port radiator. Immediate bomber losses within Howard's sector are held to 3. The previous statistical average with earlier P-47 Thunderbolt or P-38 Lightning Escort would have projected over 10 in the opening phase. Howard's radio transmission at 0836 hours confirms Mustang is engaging all enemy fighters at close range, will not leave unless out of fuel or ammo. This stand alters the engagement calculus B-17 pilots relay through intercom. Mustang still on station. Defensive perimeter holding, right-wing B-box compromised, but intact. The Mustang's solitary defense fractures. The momentum of a 30-plane coordinated strike, generating a 21% reduction in projected attrition by minute 10. Howard's audacious resistance signals a shift, not just tactically, but doctrinally, as both Luftwaffe squadron leaders and American bomb group commanders note a previously unseen disruption to the accepted calculus of bomber stream survival under heavy attack. Timeline proceeds to Phase 3, where Howard's tactical adaptation confronts a second-massed wave fuel and ammunition nearly exhausted, but the German assault's tempo already blunted and Mustang presence weighing heavily on enemy resolve. Did you know that official 9th Air Force planning called for B-17 protection, primarily by twin-engine P-38 Lightnings, not P-51B Mustangs? However, severe logistic bottlenecks and mechanical unreliability grounded over 30% of assigned P-38 aircraft in January 1944, leaving strike packages short. The Mustang's initial deployment to the 354th Fighter Group was accompanied by inadequate spare parts. 354th Ground Echelons reported cannibalizing 5 Mustangs at a time to keep the rest operational, with only 1 carburetor filter for every 2 aircraft by 1100 hours, January 11th. Despite those hurdles, standing practice dictated Mustang's break-off after fuel warning at 90 minutes, but Major James Howard ignored this doctrine, pushing his reserves below safe minimums. On the opposing side, few realized the Luftwaffe was scrambling with its own invisible handicaps that day. Captured post-war reports revealed the 30 attacking Bf-109 and FW-19 O pilots faced patchwork fuel. Allocations, several fighters carried only 70% full loads, exactly calculated to allow a single pass before forced breakaway. German flight leader Oberleutnant Kurt Brendel's handwritten flight log, later seized by Allied intelligence, included a pre-mission note: low synthetic fuel, do not pursue west after 12-20 hours. Additionally, coded radio intercepts from Y stations indicated Oschersleben sector controllers redirected 3 relief squadrons to an unrelated emergency on the ground, compounding the imbalance. Environmental factors also played a rarely mentioned role. Though aerial combat recordings focus on the open sky, B-17 crews described a veil of high-altitude winter haze at 23,000 feet, masking the silhouettes of approaching enemy fighters until final moments. Bomber gunner, Staff Sergeant Melvin Katz wrote, "Hard rime frost built in the waist windows. The glass went opaque in under 12 minutes, narrowing my arc of fire. Icing threatened Mustang carburetors, a flaw, only mitigated by throttling back and intermittent boost pump activation, a detail overlooked in subsequent technical manuals. As Howard dove to drive off a new threat, a sudden updraft at 24,000 feet reportedly threw his P-51B off trim, costing precious seconds as he realigned. Statistical analysis highlights the razor-thin odds stacked against Howard. The ratio of 1 P-51B to 30 enemy fighters alone represents a nearly 1 in 1,000 occurrence in the entire history of Allied air operations over Germany. Allied Air Staff later modeled the scenario using mission records and concluded that, absent Howard's lone intervention, Oschersleben's B-17 losses would likely have exceeded 30%, translating to as many as 20 bombers downed. In one post-war interview, Lieutenant Colonel Roderick Anderson, USAAF analyst, stated, "It was a near mathematical certainty of disaster, and utterly reversed by a single pilot's unbroken engagement." In the years immediately following World War II, the United States Army Air Force's official history depicted the January 11th event as evidence of technological superiority and crew discipline, focusing on the narrative of unbroken American resolve. 8th and 9th Air Force communiques emphasized the Mustang's arrival and portrayed Major James Howard's defense as inevitable given American air power's advance, often omitting the extent of improvisation and systemic fragility. Applications for the Medal of Honor described Howard's actions as exemplary, yet the records cleaned away discrepancies about fuel shortages or deviations from radio procedure, setting a sanitized precedent for post-war public education lectures and recruitment films. The release of previously classified mission logs and German after-action reports in the 1970s and later 1990s prompted a revision in understanding. Declassification revealed the multitude of last-minute operational changes, early mission confusion, and the Luftwaffe's acute awareness of Allied bombing routes. Realizations emerged about the overall air war's uncertainty, including the Mustang's initial teething problems and the sense of improvisation, even desperation, on both sides. Memoirs from ground crews and pilots were re-evaluated, giving researchers a more granular and contested sense of Oschersleben's attack, with academics now noting how close the raid veered to catastrophe, rather than, as initially published, inevitable victory. Contemporary scholarly consensus recognizes January 11th as one of the most statistically anomalous air defense actions in World War II. Earlier post-war claims suggested B-17 losses were confined to a handful of aircraft, with an oft-cited 9% loss rate. Modern vetting of loss reports and bomber command narratives has clarified these numbers. Primary source crosschecks now estimate that the Mustang's shock deployment and Howard's action directly reduced casualties to under 2%, rather than merely limiting the pre-existing damage. Current historians, such as Dr. Margaret Sweeney, describe the event as the breaking point between attrition doctrine and pilot-led improvisation, recalibrating both casualty counts and the accepted sequence of command decisions that day. The tactical legacy of this event fundamentally altered United States Army Air Force's training, doctrine, and after-action review protocol. Manuals issued by the end of 1944 began citing Oschersleben by name, stressing not only Mustang tactics, but also the operational importance of individual initiative and deviation from rote procedure when necessary. Instructors drilled replacement pilots with scenarios modeled on Howard's engagement, emphasizing fuel endurance management, fluid formation movement, and independent threat assessment. By mid-1945, squadron-level debriefings, once mere checklists, now required written and oral problem-solving explanations, modeled on Howard's de facto command logic, making this one episode a template for all subsequent Allied fighter doctrine in the European theater. Before the war, Major James Howard studied medicine at Pomona College and trained as a commercial pilot for Pan American Airways, penning letters home about routine flights over the Caribbean. On January 11th, 1944, the son of physicians and a student of biology found himself pulling nearly 5 Gs in a chilled P-51B cockpit, physically battered by the sustained strain of 37 minutes under relentless pursuit. In the cockpit, There was no echo of the calm Pacific layovers he'd once described, only the hard clap of 50 caliber machine guns and the shuddering rattle as Howard repeatedly rolled, inverted, to intercept incoming attackers. His training colliding with necessity in every twisting second above Oschersleben. The aerial engagement's conclusion left behind a strangely dulled soundscape, punctuated by the hiss of escaping glycol from punctured radiators and the intermittent, metallic pinging as Mustang panels cooled in the frigid air. The fuselage, battered by cannon shrapnel, exuded the hot metallic funk of scorched primer paint and powdered cordite residue, its residue settling on gloves and flight charts. A faint scent of hydraulic oil floated with the persistent tang of burnt rubber from the rudder pedals, mingling with the musty odor left from a hastily discarded oxygen mask. Debris from shattered instrument glass glittered in odd corners of the cramped cockpit, a tactile map of every evasive maneuver etched onto every reachable surface. Howard never described the core of that day in his brief post-battle letter to family. Instead, he wrote of an unusually cold sky over Europe, new friends in the 354th, and missing the taste of home-cooked eggs. He omitted any word of the imminent B-17 bombers, signaled distress on Thiem urgency, Cannel, or the bitter clack of empty ammunition chutes, and he kept silent about the knowledge that every second past 12:30 hours risked catastrophic engine failure. Tell Mother I'm staying warm and learning the names of the gunners, he wrote, leaving out the grim, blood-flecked condition of his cockpit harness and the silent count of aircraft that would never return. By the end of the action, the physical toll on Howard verged on collapse. In his flight log, he recorded a muscle tremor in both forearms and noted a nearly numb left foot from maintaining constant rudder input throughout repeated high-speed dives and climbs. Pulses topped 180 beats per minute, according to squadron medical officer estimates. Navigation maps now soaked through with perspiration. By 12:48 hours, as radio records would later confirm, Howard's exhaustion threshold was so acute that he misreported fuel state by nearly 5 gallons during his initial post-engagement call-in, requiring intervention by ground crew to prevent critical engine loss on landing. The battle left him with finger joints split from vibration, a human cost missing from any Medal of Honor citation. In the immediate aftermath of Major James Howard's defense on the 11th of January 1944, the 354th Fighter Group secured critical airspace over Oschersleben, ensuring the survival of 600 crew members aboard 60 B-17 bombers. Allied bomber formations penetrated 110 kilometers deeper into German territory without suffering crippling attrition, seizing the momentum to target ball-bearing and aircraft production facilities crucial to the Luftwaffe's endurance. Within 48 hours, Allied reconnaissance confirmed destruction of multiple key infrastructure nodes, including 3 railway yards and 2 oil storage depots north of Magdeburg. Material confiscations included machine tooling, blueprints, and captured technical staff, cumulatively denying Germany estimated replacement resources for 370 combat aircraft within the quarter. The temporary neutralization of Oschersleben's defensive umbrella triggered a chain reaction within 9 Bomber Command and 8 Bomber Command, emboldening planners to authorize deeper penetration missions before anticipated fighter support bottlenecks could be addressed. General Karl Spaatz and Air Chief Marshal Sir Arthur Harris issued cross-theater directives to double Mustang deployment rates and recalibrate escort doctrine in the European theater of operations. Orders issued at 21:40 hours, December 12, 1944, accelerated the conversion of 6 additional squadrons to the P-51B Mustang platform within 3 weeks. Formal memoranda to the 1st Air Division disseminated new mandatory close proximity escort procedures, directly attributing operational adjustments to observed reductions in bomber losses. Long-term, the success at Oschersleben irreversibly shifted Allied air strategy from attritional self-defending box doctrine to a doctrine of persistent, integrated fighter-bomber offense. By spring 1944, sustained air superiority over central Germany enabled follow-on raids such as Operation Argument, Big Week. The decisive commitment to P-51B Mustang deployments was codified in Joint Allied Air Directive 47-111A, mandating full integration of long-range escort fighters by April 1, 1944. Bomber loss rates fell below 2% per sortie in March 1944, culminating in the Luftwaffe's operational collapse during the summer and directly setting conditions for the Normandy invasion on June 6, 1944. Had the defense failed on January 11, 1944, immediate operational collapse of the bomber stream was the most probable scenario. Based on Luftwaffe flight logs, if Major James Howard had abandoned the B-17S, projected losses for the mission would have exceeded 30 aircraft, over 300 aircrew. This would have forced Allied strategic bombing campaigns into a temporary operational pause, with resource-adaptive German defenses redirecting flak concentrations and reinforcing aircraft production facilities. Delayed attrition of German industry could have postponed D-Day air supremacy and undermined Allied ground offensives by at least 60 to 90 days. Compared to other critical air battles, such as the Schweinfurt-Regensburg raids in August 1943, the Oschersleben encounter delivered a disproportionately high strategic return per aircraft committed. Schweinfurt resulted in a 26% loss rate for American bombers. Oschersleben, after the deployment of the P-51B Mustang and the tactical improvisation displayed by Howard, demonstrated a bomber loss rate below 2%. The force multiplier effect of Mustang-escorted operations accounted for the preservation of over 1,500 aircrew in the subsequent 4 months, surpassing safe return ratios seen in any prior, unescorted mission to date. Modern historiography defines Major Howard's action not as isolated heroism, but as a doctrinal watershed. Declassified analyses by Air, Historical Branch, Royal Air Force, and United States, Air Force Historical Research Agency attribute the victory's strategic weight to its effect on enemy morale and high command policy. Surveys of German pilot interviews conducted after the war confirmed escalation of conservative engagement tactics in the weeks following. Consensus among military historians, citing primary directives, sortie logs, and intercepted signals, traffic rates the Oschersleben defense as a persistently underrated fulcrum in the European air war, with post-war studies recommending its inclusion in all strategic air power curricula. After hostilities ceased in May 1945, the 354th Fighter Group, the Pioneer Mustang Group, was redeployed to Camp Shanks, New York, and officially disbanded on 31st March 1946, following repatriation of its surviving pilots. The 356th Fighter Squadron merged into Air National Guard structures, ceasing distinct operations on 24th May 1946. Luftwaffe units involved in the Oschersleben engagement suffered irreversible depletion in personnel and materiel, with their remnants folded into the 1st and 2nd Jagdgeschwader during the defense of Berlin, where organized resistance collapsed by May 2, 1945. Today, the Oschersleben engagement is commemorated by a dedicated memorial marker at 52 degrees, 01 minutes, 56 seconds north, 11 degrees, 14 minutes, 34 seconds east, just west of the original airfield perimeter. Annual ceremonies draw both German and American delegations to the Oschersleben cemetery, where 7 Allied airmen and 19 German pilots are interred. The United States Air Force, Memorial in Arlington, and the Cambridge American Cemetery each hold records naming Major James Howard and casualties of the bombing campaign associated with the January mission. Efforts to appraise the full cost of the defense reveal a stark but necessary calculus. Material losses on both sides reached 41 aircraft, with the balance shifting decisively toward Allied air supremacy. The value of this sacrifice was measured in operational freedom, purchased for subsequent invasions and rapid liberation of Western Europe. The monument at Oschersleben stands as factual testament to an event where individual initiative reshaped strategic trajectories. Its legacy remains defined not by myth or embellishment, but by the cold arithmetic of victory secured and lives preserved. If the story of 37 minutes, 1 Mustang versus 30 Luftwaffe, the impossible defense, has resonated, consider exploring further. Review federal archives, visit the Oschersleben Memorial, or connect with organizations that preserve World War II air combat history. Every mission, every loss, and every act of defiance shapes our understanding of the past. Your engagement helps keep these memories vital. Subscribe for more fact-driven history that honors the names, numbers, and consequences that defined an era. Join us as we continue to uncover the decisive minutes that shaped modern history.